Hey, we're live. Okay. This is the first time we're using the YouTube live feature.
The YouTube.
The YouTube live feature.
Okay.
You gotta listen. And I'm Jeremy. I'm here with Mike McElroy. And this is the first time we're using this feature, so we don't know what's going to happen.
Hope it works.
We'll find out. Hopefully, if anybody watches this, it's not. If it's terrible, you probably won't see it live, so if it's terrible, I'll be able to delete it. All right, we are live on the podcast. Mike McElroy, welcome to the podcast once again.
Glad to be here.
Are you really?
Yeah.
So I got a question for you. Have you ever eaten peanut butter and a pickle
We didn't
sandwich?
talk about whatever you're about to ask me. You just threw a curveball at me.
I know. I was prepared for this. I was trying to make some. I was short on time for lunch today. I wanted a peanut butter sandwich, and I didn't have any banana. I like to put
Peanut
banana
butter and pickle, did you say?
Peanut butter and sweet pickle sandwich. Have you ever tried that?
I don't like pickles at all.
No. Well then, so no. I'm still searching for, and I put some pickles on it
That's
today.
like the opposite of a carnivore diet.
I know. I needed some carbs. I really struggled today. I was tired this morning during my run.
How's your diet going? Where are you at now? I know you had bumped up carbs a little bit.
I bumped up carbs. I'm still pretty, like I said last time, when we did last podcast, there's a really fine line between a strict, fad-like diet and sticking to it and just overeating.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't stick right to your diet and you start throwing in stuff that you've been excluding, suddenly you're just
Overeating everything.
You're eating a bunch of junk that you don't need. So I have to be real careful about that. So I've kind of, it's been a little odd. I'll go days, 2 or 3 days with just extremely high protein, low carbs, and then all of a sudden one day I'll have a sandwich for lunch. I had a donut this morning. It's Friday, so I had a donut with my son this morning. So, but everything.
Did you run today?
Yeah, but yesterday. Yesterday, I did 3 really hard workouts yesterday, all unintentionally. They just it just happened. So I did one in the morning, and then in the afternoon I wanted to go.
We're going to get to that question about struggling with if you don't have enough time.
Yeah, this is what I did.
It's the opposite of that.
No, it's good. I didn't have much time. I had 2 openings yesterday to do a workout. So I did a workout in the garage. That was my main workout. Then later in the afternoon, I thought, well, I wanted to go for a run, but I didn't have much time. So I took your advice from our Super Compensation podcast, and I went out to this hill. There's a hill not even about half a mile from my house. We call it the Cemetery Hill. And I did, if you didn't listen to the Super Compensation podcast, Mike had suggested that one thing to do, this was for a specific person, but it was a good concept, was to do, and I'm probably screwing this up, but it was basically about 4 near max effort hill repeats, but shorter durations than we normally do. So maybe he said 30 seconds. It was as steep as I could get. I got the steepest part. And then take a pretty long recovery. So he was talking 2, 3, 4 minute recoveries. So I mapped out, there's 1/10 of a mile. There's a line that's painted at the bottom of the hill, and then there's a telephone pole that's exactly 1/10 of a mile up from that line. So I went out and did it, and I did 4, and I walked down the hill back. That was my recovery. It was about 3 minutes. And the first one I did in 26 seconds. Then I did 22 seconds, 22 seconds, and 21 seconds.
Nice.
And it was full blast as much as I could muster. There was sweat flying everywhere. My hamstrings were screaming.
Less than 2 minutes of work.
It was really hard, but it felt pretty good. But then I so it was only 1.7 miles total with a 1 mile warm up. And then I went to our training group that night, and my friend Ashley, who's a coach for my training program, or has been in the past, just showed up, and she decided to lead the workout. So I did the workout then too, and it was a lot of lunges, which I'm really bad at.
So are you sore today?
Yeah, I'm really sore. So when I went out for my run this morning, I was supposed to do 8 or 9 miles, and I just did 4, and I was done. So I didn't know if I was just
Do you think
sore.
you're more sore from the run, the sprints, or the lunges?
The lunges. I think I can handle the running.
What about in your core? Are you sore at all from the sprints?
No.
Or obliques or anything?
I think the other thing, if I had run that on a track, if that had not been an incline, my hamstrings, especially my left one, it has such bad range of motion that on a track, I don't think I could almost go faster going up the hill. I'm more efficient because my stride automatically shortens, and I don't.
When you're sprinting on a track, you're like laying back like you're on a hill.
Yeah, and I've worked on that. I know. So when there's actually a hill, I'm a really good runner. Yeah. So I'm a great hill runner, I guess. But so how's you been training for it? You've been training?
Mm-mm.
Nothing. Doing nothing.
Nope.
You're looking a little. Your body fat looks like it's
I
what,
haven't-
6%
I
now.
haven't. Somebody told me this yesterday at our men's group that I was looking a little smaller up top. I haven't done like upper body work in like probably a month and a half.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
I don't know.
Just no time. Haven't felt
No,
like
I
it.
got plenty of time.
Well, it sounds like
I've
maybe
been
our-
doing a bunch of wall balls. That's about
Oh.
the only consistency in my program. Is Tuesday I do a workout with wall balls. I'm trying to
Aerobic?
build volume there.
aerobic wall balls.
I'm trying to build up to a test, which I don't know what the test is, which is a problem. But that's really the only consistency I've had in my training. Monday is some kind of strength work, usually lower body. Tuesday is some kind of running and wall balls and double unders, and then it's out the window after that.
Well, it sounds like you need to not just participate
Today I did
in.
4x400 meter run with a minute rest,
Did you really?
and then some other stuff.
How did that feel?
Good. Went from 155 down to 136 or something.
So when you run the 400s, what do you do for a warm up? Do you run?
Today?
Yeah.
That was my first 400.
All right, we're gonna have to talk about that.
Yeah, no, don't do as I've been doing.
Okay, bad question. Just forget. Just ignore that Mike even said that.
I'm in a completely different area of training than I've ever been in my life right now, and I'm enjoying it.
Are you
Like
just doing-
my training volume is low, my body feels good, my joints feel good. I don't have to warm up much. Like everything feels good. Like even if I'm squatting, I don't have to warm up for the range of motion, which normally I have to warm up for like 30 minutes. So everything feels good. I'm probably not making progress as far as fitness goes, but it's not really what I'm worried about right now.
I've had cycles in running where I do that before. I just kind of do what I feel like, and I have felt incredibly strong with that really low volume.
Yeah, I've always been very rigid in my training. From like when I started CrossFit, you know, CrossFit prides itself on constantly very functional movement, and like from pretty early on, that constantly very didn't really sit well with me. So like, and this was back in 2005 and 6, where like that's all that was out there. There wasn't any like well-written CrossFit programs at that time. But I early on I got into some that were kind of well-written, and then got into a blog that was well-written, and then got into a coach. And I've always had that, or I've always written my own program, which usually didn't last very long before I gave it back to somebody else to do. Just because I always had to have the structure. So like I said, this is the first time. It's been like 2 or 3 months. I don't have any of my training documented. Couldn't tell you what I've done in the last 3 months, but I'm enjoying it. And like I said, my body feels good. So
And that's you're gonna do this indefinitely, or just?
yeah, I don't really have any goals right now. I'm focusing on coaching. The spare time that I have, being able to be home a little bit more and be on the golf course a little bit more.
I see you've been golfing a lot. You're kind of retired, you know. You sold the gym. You started going to Florida all the time, and every time I saw you, you were
I never
down at
went
the
to
beach,
Florida.
wherever you're at. You're at the beach, and then you're golfing all the time. What's retirement like at a man?
It's good. It's good.
When you're ready. You were
It's
late.
good. Retirement with 3 kids under the age of 5.
Yeah, that's really good, man. I mean, there's probably a lot of people who would like to do that.
Yeah, speaking of 5-year-olds, my son turned 5 this week.
Yeah.
And after this, we're going to set up a zip line for his party tomorrow.
Is there any particular reason I have not been invited to this?
I was
'Cause
waiting
wanna
to do it
that.
live on
Oh,
YouTube
sure, yeah.
and podcast.
Oh, that sounds fun. Is it the kind of zip, like, do they have to hang on to it, or is
Yeah,
it?
y'all should come.
Does it handle adults?
I hope so.
Are you doing this for you or the kids?
The kids.
Yeah, like it's 20 feet off the ground. That'll be fine. I'll just run underneath it.
Yeah.
Can't you?
I told Camp today, it says 8 and older. Sorry, it's just for us.
Yeah, sorry, son. You're just gonna have to hang on to my
No, yeah,
legs.
y'all should come
When is it?
tomorrow at 4.
All right, we might have to talk about this off the air. I'll see if that works. It
Yeah.
might work.
Yeah.
Hey, look it, we got invited to a party. Look at us. Well, it sounds like
We're like 20 minutes in and haven't even talked about our topic.
I keep trying to get to the topic, but you keep changing the subject. But actually, you're talking about this subject, sort of. So for this podcast, what we did was before we started, we asked some people in my training group, you know, what topic they would like to hear us talk about, and one of the responses was from Becca, who's an athlete, both of ours, and she had talked about, you know, talking about dealing with fatigue, how to break through the mental barriers of fatigue, the physical barriers of fatigue, and I think that was really a good topic because that comes up a lot, I think, for I was telling Mike off the air before we started that a lot of endurance athletes struggle this time of year in the South because it's still so hot. You know, our brains think it's fall, but it's still 90 degrees out.
And it's
Humidity
still
is
gonna
through
be
the
hot.
roof. It's terrible. It's going to be hot for another 3 or 4 weeks, at least. And so I've seen in my group, cyclically, I see people struggle with this stuff every year about this time. Everyone starts complaining about the heat. It's usually at the beginning of the summer and at the beginning of the fall. So when Becca had said that, I thought it was a good topic. And also, you had made an Instagram post. If you don't follow Mike on Instagram, it's Coach Mike McElroy. He usually puts up pretty good stuff. But you had made a post about motivation and inspiration, and you know, we can talk about that a little bit. So I thought we could tie this all together because a little bit of battling through fatigue sometimes is whatever your motivation, whatever your inspiration is. So we thought we'd talk a little bit about that, battling through fatigue, breaking down those mental barriers of being tired, and then finding the motivation, inspiration you need to get through those things. So do you remember your Facebook post or your Instagram post?
Yeah.
What you were talking about?
Yeah, I mean, it was basically saying motivation is external motivation, things in the outside that motivates you. Inspiration is more from within. So something that's within you that just motivates you and drives you, things that get you going in the morning, things that you know, the big purpose and values of why you do things. Whereas motivation is like, if a lion's chasing you, that's motivation to move. It's not inspiration. It's once the line's gone, you don't have to run anymore.
Here's what's super fascinating to me about this, because I read your post and agreed 100% with everything you said, but I used the two terms the opposite way.
Oh, really?
Like, to me, motivation for me is always, what's my motivation? Like, I have goals, I like the process, and I want to see big numbers on my or low numbers depending on my training log. Like, those are things that keep me motivated. Something might inspire me momentarily, like a song might come on. But you used it the opposite. So I think we're talking about the same thing. It's just different.
So maybe my first description just now is better. Something that's external. I mean, a goal is still external, but like you said, a song or a motivational speech, that's something external that really doesn't play a factor, but it may get us going for the moment. If we're feeling tired, that may pump us up for the moment. But things that pump us up aren't the things that are going to keep us going when stuff gets really challenging.
Right.
When you get fatigued or you're trying to break through a plateau, you can't just use a song to get you through that or whatever.
Yeah, the song might get you through one session or one workout. Yeah, and we've talked about that with Becca before. She'll if she has to do an easy run, she'll listen to like different music or a podcast or a book. And I do this too. When I need to really get at it on the track, I'll put on some music that just gets me fired up. Now, whether that's motivation or inspiration, now I'm confused. But either way, they're different things.
Well, too, the other thing that I mentioned in that post was the external thing. Like I said, if you're feeling tired or you're feeling unmotivated or uninspired to do your training, and you get a song or you get a group of people or you get something else to kind of get you going or get you pumped up for the session, that could push you into overtraining. Because there could be a reason that you're tired and a reason you're not feeling it. And sometimes you should listen to that and not get something to motivate you and get you going. Sometimes you should go take a nap or go take a rest day instead. So that's the other area that, especially in the group fitness area, like if you always have to have that there, to me that kind of asks you to question things like should you need that every day, and are you pushing too hard because you have that motivation that thinks it's helping you push your limits more? Because maybe you shouldn't be pushing your limits every day.
I have always said from the time I started my run training group in 2012, I always said I want people to find momentary motivation or inspiration, whatever, momentary power in the group effect of a group workout. But overall, I want to teach them to be self-sufficient. I want them to understand why they're doing stuff, how to adjust, how to go do it on their own. So I don't want them in a group all the time.
Right.
Now we have group workouts all the time now with almost every day with our training group, but a lot of people have very specific plans to them. So either even if they show up for the group, they have to do their own thing. Last night we did a group workout, and like I said, Coach Ashley showed up and she put us through the ringer. It was a ridiculously hard workout. But there were some people that probably worked harder than they should have because they were part of the group and they didn't want to be the one that didn't do the workout.
Yeah, I mean, I just left training with 3 or 4 other people who were all doing separate things, and I've said that often, and it goes hand in hand with runs, because like when I give intervals for CrossFit that are, not just running, but wall balls, burpees, box jumps, whatever, and people say they need a group to be able to push hard enough, and my argument to that is, well, these are supposed to be sustainable. So if you get in a group and maybe you get 4 rounds in the first block, and then the next time you only get 3.5, and the next round you only get 3 because you were trying to keep up with whoever in the first round,
Yeah.
then you don't get the desired result anyway. So it would be better for you to be on your own and get 3.5 for all of them. So that's where the conflict of that comes in.
And it's challenging because I do almost all my own training is done by myself, not in the gym, just by myself. I track by myself, on the trail by myself, in my garage by myself. And some days I know I could work harder, but I'm not. I've turned the music up. Monty's not there for me to compete against. But I don't know if that's always. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes it's bad.
Yeah, and it is. And sometimes, like I said, sometimes it's bad because it pushes you over the limits. But there are times when it's needed, and there are times when it's good. Especially if you're like trying to get ready for a race, or in my case, trying to get ready for a CrossFit competition. Like, yeah, you got to push the limits, and those other factors help and are beneficial.
And that kind of goes into what Becca had mentioned with fatigue, is that, sometimes with fatigue you have to, so somebody probably at my workout last night has some cumulative fatigue and just wasn't feeling good, but they probably did this workout, and ultimately the way they really felt, the mental fatigue they were feeling, the physical fatigue they were feeling, they probably would not have opted to do that workout on their own. But how do people deal with that fatigue? What do you do, and do you classify fatigue differently? Like mental fatigue, is that a motivational, inspirational thing? Or does that come from being physically fatigued?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. All of it. Yeah. No, there's a few different things I guess I look at if somebody, we'll just assume that somebody has fatigue. So what are we going to look at to see how to fix that first? And then we can go a couple different areas. But if somebody says they have fatigue and they're just tired and they can't get it together, first I'm not going to look at the training plan. First I'm going to look at outside of the training plan. So their nutrition, their sleep, their work, their relationships, all that stuff that play a factor in how much they recover and their energy and all that stuff. If all that stuff's dialed in, which is a slim chance, if all that stuff's dialed in, then we can look at the training program. But if it's not, then we'll look at that stuff first. Because in my experience, it's not very often that the training plan is the reason they're overtrained. I think we talked about this on the last podcast with the super compensation.
I think so,
we touched on it a little bit, but it's rare that the training program is what's causing them to be overtrained. It's they're under recovering. So that's what I look at first. Like you mentioned, mental fatigue. Like again, looking at relationships. If they're getting in fights with their boss all the time, or their coworkers are stressful, or whatever. All those things can play a factor, which do affect your training, and you can't ignore that. And if you have something, like you can attest to this now as I can. Like if you have a job where you're completely fulfilled and you enjoy it, and you enjoy the people you interact with, like your training's going to be better. Yeah. And there's
no question.
There's no question. And unfortunately, most people don't have that going for them, or maybe they like their job, but it's still a long day. If you got a lawyer or a doctor, even if they enjoy it, it's still long days, which is taxing. So, where we want to go with that, but.
Well, and talking about just dealing with fatigue, but I think sometimes what can happen is the two can kind of exacerbate the other. So like if you're struggling at work, you're struggling through these workouts, and it feels like you're struggling from physical fatigue, but it's probably the mental fatigue. But then it just manifests itself. Pretty soon you're struggling so much, it's so hard that you are physically struggling, and then pretty soon you have both areas are screwed up.
And ironically, you start sleeping worse when you get to those points of being so fatigued.
Terrible.
Like you start sleeping worse, which obviously compounds itself even more.
Yeah, so you have to break that cycle and get out of it somehow.
And a lot of times, the people who get into these situations are kind of type A, like hard workers, get after it type people, and the solution is stop. and rest,
Yeah.
which doesn't go well, which stresses them out even more.
There's an art to that, because and you have to, so I've been running for so long and I've seen these cycles come and go that I deal with them a lot better now. Now, if I wake up on a Saturday or Sunday morning and I was planning to do a long run and I'm just not feeling it, I can tell I'm not sleeping well and something just doesn't feel right, I just don't do it.
Yeah.
You know, because I have a big picture. That what motivates me is my big picture. I have a lot of big plans, and these little tiny things aren't going to make that. In fact, they're going to be. I know they're going to be beneficial down the road. But most people who don't have that history of training can only look. They look at a missed workout or a rest day as a bad thing. And so if you, and I know Becca, you're probably going to listen to this, and we've talked about Becca before. I think she's been on the podcast. She didn't make that one didn't make the cut. Bad audio, but
bad audio.
Becca gets mentioned a lot because we both work with Becca now. We both worked with her in the past, and she's an interesting athlete because she's done a lot of different types of things and been really
Excelled at
both
different
of them.
things.
But she had about 3 weeks in her training log where she just had mentioned kind of offhand that one time her knees were hurting, another time she just struggled, and one time she just felt like she was sweating too much, just fatigue. And I really you could see the cumulative fatigue building up.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's stress at work or if it's just literally the fatigue from everything she's been doing, but I gave her 2 extra days off, which meant she had 3 days in a row where I just told her, if you do anything, just go for a walk. That's about it. And she almost took it personally initially, because she thought that maybe she was doing something wrong or the training wasn't going well, and I just said, no, this is a good thing. Like, it just means you have to let your body recover and adapt, and when you come out of it, you're going to be stronger. It's kind of a super compensation, you know, writ large. We're just making it actually take place.
Yeah, and that's where I think a simple plug for both of us is I think a coach is massively important, because one, they can look at it with an unbiased opinion. I mean, you may not even notice that you're making those comments 3 times a week. You may not even pick up on it. And 2, if you do, your mindset is most likely going to be to toughen up and quit doing it. Or you'll go on the other side of things and you might have like a little sore quad and say, oh, I shouldn't run today at all. And it's like, well, let's try to fight through it one time. So, but you know her as a person, so you know if she's saying something, it means something. She's not gonna just say something for the sake of it.
Right.
Whereas another athlete, you may see those comments and be like, "Yeah, you're fine, keep going."
Yeah.
So that's where the coach can look at it and be like, and know whether or not you need to take a rest day or push through it, or maybe break through with a super compensation model that we talked about last time on the other end of the spectrum. Like, instead of giving Becca 3 days rest, maybe you give her a 20-mile run. Depending on the person, but you know what I mean, that's where our coach is valuable, is because they can look at it from an unbiased opinion. Do you look at, you don't track resting heart rate or anything with any of your athletes?
No.
I asked Becca about that the other day, 'cause that's something we look at a little bit, is resting heart rate with some of my higher end athletes, of either resting heart rate and or HRV, which is, are you familiar with?
I've gotten into it recently. I'm not super familiar with it, but I had a client ask me about it about 2 weeks ago.
Heart rate variability, so it's basically essentially looking at how recovered you are. So it's looking at how much into the parasympathetic system you are. So you got parasympathetic, which is a rest and relaxed state, and sympathetic, which is your fight or flight state, basically. And the less variety in your heart rate, your beats, if you're looking at it on the little chart, the less variety it is, the more sympathetic you are, which means you're not recovering. So you're sympathetic when you're running, when you're lifting weights, you know, fight or flight. You should be parasympathetic when you're sleeping, getting ready to eat food, which is why we talk about slowing down and chewing your food.
Not this again.
And breathing. But HRV, they have some different apps for it and stuff, but another way you can do it is just your resting heart rate. If you're like, her resting heart rate, if its average is around, I think she said it's pretty low. It's like 41, 42 or something.
It's low.
But if you see that and all of a sudden for 2 weeks in a row it's like 47, like that's an issue. That's a sign of her being overtrained and not being able to recover. So that's another thing that I look at with, like I said, with higher level people who will track it and do it, because it's